With funding harder to come by for companies of all sizes, proven technology and the partnerships to get them to market are more valuable than ever. Today, we meet a venture studio that's helping founders get funded and connecting them to leading academic and government institutions, all with the idea of solving society's biggest challenges. Welcome back to another edition of The Angel Nest, where real angel investors and entrepreneurs partner to build great companies. I'm David Hemingway, and this is another of our series of podcasts with Johnnie Walker of Rooled, Outsourced CFO and Accounting Services, about how founders are getting funded in this new environment. Rooled are the startup finance experts. Welcome back, Johnnie. Thanks for being here.
Thanks very much, David. Great to be here again.
And welcome to our guest today, Alex Goldberg of Astral Funds. Thanks for joining us today, Alex, on The Angel Nest.
Thanks, David. Thanks, Johnnie.
Now, you and Johnnie met because at Astral, you have a more hands-on involvement in the companies that you invest in, more so than the average incubator or accelerator, I'd say. Tell us about how Astral works.
Sure. Well, first of all, thanks so much for inviting me here. It's a real pleasure. Actually, the funny backstory is that way back when Johnnie and I were actually in the same business school class at Columbia a number of years ago. And,
wow.
I, in fact, reached back out to him because I knew he was involved with accounting services and financial services and great CFO fractional work. And really, he had a scalable solution that could help a variety of circumstances. And so to answer your question, many VC funds, many accelerators, many incubators are a really well-known model. An incubator or an accelerator typically sees 100 plus applications for people who want to potentially participate. They look at fully formed teams and decide who's admitted in return for some percentage equity. What we've done with Astral is, in fact, engaged in a venture studio model. They're basically thesis-driven investments. They're product-led, and we essentially come up with the ideas. And so in each case, we've been incubating a number of potential companies, and in each case, we need to put the infrastructure together so that if they do launch, they're set to be rocket ships and they are investable. But in some cases, because we're essentially a moonshot factory, some of them don't. So what we've contemplated and what we've built in partnership with Rooled and Johnnie has been a templatized model where we can found a company, put a small team on it. They know exactly the infrastructure, the software, and the people that we need to make it look like a real company and be a real company and track the finances appropriately like a institutional grade investor would demand. And from there, we do the creative part.
So, Johnnie, talk about this model where you are essentially the outsourced CFO for all of the Astral companies. Sounds fascinating and very efficient, but I imagine may pose some challenges also.
Yeah, no, thank you, and thank you for the comments there, Alex, as well. It has been a great experience working with Astral, and I know that Sana from our team and various other staff accountants have really worked to, as you say, templatize that process. But one of the aspects that we know from experience with doing accounting and finance support for venture-backed companies is that you can't automate everything. You've got to have somebody in there which is some proportion of hand-holding in terms of the processes you've got to set up, whether it's payroll, whether it's accounts payable, accounts receivable. All this stuff needs some guidance from a human person actually in the loop. And so that's where we've been able to blend, good cost efficiency at the level of setting up the basic processes, but you layer on that experience so these companies have a chance to grow and grow efficiently. And I think that's been a key aspect of what we've done with Astral, and it's a model that we very much hope we can scale up from here.
Alex, how big an advantage is it that you're dealing with a single source for accounting and you know that you can trust the numbers across your whole spectrum of companies?
Oh, it's fantastic. I mean, we basically built a stack, and in concert with the humans that Johnnie has working with him, and we kind of are able to formalize and templatize things, and it takes there's a ramp up for the first company, and then we kind of learn the learning curve and the time it takes to set up a company, its books, its investment, its chargebacks, its sponsored research, et cetera. The nuances of our particular sector has been shrunk substantially, and so the costs have shrunk as well. And so we generally have a similar group of people on these companies as they scale up. And we want them teed up so that as they take off, they're ready for investment grade, institutional grade investment.
So let's talk about the market for a second. Everybody knows that it's much tougher to get funding now in the general marketplace than it has been in the last few years. We want to help founders get ready to be funded. Can you give them some good advice with all the companies that you've seen and all the companies you've invested in? What do you look for in a new investment?
Oh, sure. That's a great question. There's often a debate, is it the product or is it the person that's the most important question? And I think that's a false dichotomy. People spend hours debating that question. The thing that's most interesting to me is actually what inning is the industry that the company is in. And so that's really a marketplace timing question more so than the person or the product. So I don't think you want to find bad entrepreneurs, but in effect, what I look for are two things. One is a company competing in a sector that's in roughly the second or third inning. I'm not interested in the eighth or ninth inning. I don't mean to beat up on media ad tech, but I might call that the 10th inning. Yeah. I don't mean to beat up on spacecraft and space tech. That might be in the first or the second inning. But third inning or so, to me, there's a validation. There's some initial entree from some companies, so you're not inventing a space from scratch, but there isn't that deep sense of competition you might get later on. So the first is the timing of the market space, and the second is I always want to know who is the entrepreneur, what is their backstory, what is the unfair advantage they bring to the table. I always want to know what did they do previously, what was it that motivated them to be where they are. And so in this difficult environment, to be more concrete, we all know AI is sort of a very big hype curve right now. My personal belief is that the large language models, LLMs that people are focused on, are going to hit sort of a hype, I guess nadir soonish.
Hyper-hype.
It's going through a hyper-hype right now. And to me, what's interesting is I think the next chess move will be in about a year and a half. There'll be a verticalization as AI gets embedded in a lot of industries. So what we've bet on, and specifically what I've been putting my money behind, has been the intersection of biomedical engineering, med tech, and health tech, and AI, and its intersection. So I think there's an old quote I always bring up from Warren Buffett: in every market, first come the innovators, then come the imitators, then come the idiots. So I think we may be on the third I right now as it stands for generic AI and some of the AI platforms out there. But I do feel that there's some room to grow for some of the verticalized AI in some of the deeper tech and deeper scientific sectors.
And to take a minute to bring Johnnie in on what he does all the time, when these new companies come to you, how important are their financial projections? How important is it that they've done the work to look down the next 6, 12, 18 months?
So Johnnie's company, Rooled, has two tiers, essentially, as I see it. I don't mean to overstate things, but there's sort of the accounting and back office and bookkeeping, and then there's the fractional CFO capabilities. And as far as I'm concerned, in my rudimentary knowledge, basically pro formas are fiction writing. Nobody knows the future. But what's important to an investor, and I've been an investor many times across many deals, is understanding the thinking of how a CEO navigates what those projections look like and what the reasoning is. And so where I play with the venture studio is I'll bring in someone who's a scientist or a medical doctor with some entrepreneurial experience. I bring my knowledge to the table as well. But what's invaluable is being able to draw in a fractional CFO to take that knowledge, take this the knowledge of the sector, take the projections, and put them into a map that could help an audience of an investor understand what the thinking is. What are the unit economics? How might they scale? What's the cost of goods sold, et cetera? So I think what's interesting is this ability to weave together the practicality of a standard finance language with the dreams of an entrepreneur as they think of where things could go in the next 5 years.
So, Alex, we'd love to know what are some of your favorite opportunities at the moment? What are you looking at? What's really making you excited about the next 5 years?
Sure. First, a backstory. I had a New York Angels investment I brought to the table that was very much in this sector. I actually, in very short order, invested in a company called Base Pause. It was it was a funny example because it was at this intersection of biotech and AI and data. And in effect, I was fascinated by this. This entrepreneur came to me with a 23andMe of sorts, but for dogs and cats, which I thought was hysterical, and I couldn't take it too seriously to begin with. But the more I learned about it and the more I thought about the CEO and what she was bringing to the table, the more I realized how brilliant it was. It turns out that for human beings to draw together someone's DNA test with what they eat and their medical records will take us decades to get through the HIPAA requirements. It's just impossible. There's too many regulatory barriers and too much friction. And what she was able to do with dogs and cats was sell people a $120 plus kit to do a DNA sequence and then begin to get medical records from the veterinarians and also begin to think about what food the pets were eating, and then begin to do peer analysis of similar, canines or cats or whatnot. I don't even know the breeds, but you could figure out, was your cat a fat cat compared to its peers, which was hysterical. So she, in fact, was this very telegenic, very thoughtful, incredibly well-spoken person who went on TV on the Home Shopping Network, number of consumer TV stations, and was able to sell incredibly. But secretly in the back room, she had this incredibly brilliant science team, MD, PhD from Stanford Medical School, and had some incredible CRISPR technologies as well. And in fact, was able to figure out for each person who owns a cat, evidently, you spend about $14,000 over the life on veterinary bills. And she, in fact, was able to identify what were the biggest risks to a veterinary bill at a visit. And anyway, the bottom line is over the last, I think there was a 3-year period where she grew to several $1 million in revenue and very quickly got snapped up for an over $50 million exit. She made a partnership with Purina Dog Food, and they created an affiliate marketing agreement where it was essentially the DNA diet. So based on what the DNA test said, you could eat certain foods if you're the cat and live longer. So to me, that was just a very fun example of where there was a beautifully sort of articulated consumer message. During the pandemic, people considered dogs and cats to be part of their families. It moved from the backyard to the living room to the bed.
Sure.
And at the same time, there was some really deep technology underneath. And so that intersection was interesting to me. Yeah. In terms of what we at Astral are looking at now, I'd say one sector that's very interesting to us is the contact lens market. I call it contact lenses with superpowers. The structure of the industry is very consolidated. There's 3 or 4 or 5 major distributors that essentially control contact lenses. They regularly make acquisitions for product line extensions in the billions of dollars. And we have some really interesting interdisciplinary science we have access to, from novel biomaterials to mechanical engineering to chemical engineering to thinking about the biomarkers that may sit in someone's teardrops, and the ability to both sense and perhaps even provide therapies for different eye disease and systemic diseases. So I brought in an ophthalmology surgeon who's a friend of mine as the CEO. She has a practice a couple days every other week, but really is doing this as her main gig now. And she has a team of scientists working on some key innovations that we think are fascinating for dry eye disease, potentially for glaucoma, and for some other indications that we think are really interesting. So that the notion of a problem statement that involves interdisciplinary science in a sector that's very acquisitive and very consolidated is kind of magic for us. So that's a thesis that we're moving forward on.
When you look at your companies and the kind of track that they execute on, what are the trigger points for sort of engaging with external capital, other sources of capital, and how do you see your sort of role as they scale evolving back to the venture studio model? And how
Sure. First, one of my favorite lines is the product is the protagonist, which is to say all of us, whether we're investors or entrepreneurs or individuals who are helping the company, are all supporting cast. So to a certain extent, the product is the protagonist. Whatever it needs, it gets. In our model, what we've done is we've set off a team typically in a nonprofit R&D context. We're partnered with several laboratories that are doing some incredibly interesting research, academic research and translational research. When it reaches a certain degree of maturity of what we would call non-dilutive capital, we'll basically found a company in Delaware. I'll put one of my friends in as an EIR, an entrepreneur in residence. In this case, my friend, the ophthalmologist, is running this one. And we go through a 3 to 6 month incubation or pre-incubation period. We'll provide them with an initial batch of capital and basically say, listen, guys, it's you, the scientists, anyone you want to bring in. I provide an incredible amount of air support from advisors who I think are interesting, who might be complementary. I find co-founders, whatever skill set the product needs to be successful. And we essentially go through a gate. At the 3 to 6 month point, we want to see a pitch deck, we want to see a basic prototype, and we want to see a vision, and we want to see a pro forma CFO set of financials. And from there, we make a decision. Do we want to decide that the timing is not right for this product and we cancel it, or do we want to progress and we'll put more money in and tee them up to essentially raise money from external sources? We always want to externally check it with VC funds that we're friends with and affiliated with. So our model essentially is to spend a lot of money in non-dilutive capital in the pregame, spend a small amount of money up front in the pre-incubation phase, and then externally test. And at that moment, maintain the right to continue to invest 20% in whatever round, whatever terms that external party essentially has decided to put forward for that company. And if that company needs a little bit of a backstop or a little bit of a extra couple quarters, we'll be for them as well, there for them as well. So to us, that model essentially positions us as a substantial shareholder in each company, as full-blown co-founders, and we put together these people with special unfair advantages, with a capability or an invention with a deep patent portfolio and some advances in an industry that we've targeted. So this is really thesis-driven investing, and it takes what historically we've done at New York Angels, which is take inbounds and reverses it. We're the ones who are the product-driven innovators.
In a lot of ways, frankly, it's de-risking some of those very systemic elements of the business growth. So you're kind of taking, you've got that market, you've got the product opportunity is established. Like at the earliest point possible, you're validating the whole idea, and you're providing that infrastructure around them that makes it, much more likely that they're going to succeed in that respect.
Yeah, I think if I look at the rough ratios that are evolving, we see about 10 to 20 projects that we're tracking in the nonprofit lab-driven environment, and of those, we've created about 5 candidates, and about 2 or 3 of them, it looked like, are going to go past that pre-incubation phase, and we've made the call to cancel 2 of them, that they're too early. The research needs another year for it to bake in the oven before we're ready to take off. We certainly have the rights to continue with it later, but it's not right for the market. It's really a first or a second inning innovation. And so for us, what we've really tried to do is hold ourselves to account, make sure that what we launch is investable by an external party. And if it's not at that set of maturity metrics, then that's a self-fulfilling prophecy, and we'll take it from there. But what we'd like to do is do what it's hard for entrepreneurs to do themselves: put together multiple disciplines of science into a product that can really launch sort of a revenue stream across an industry that we think is under great growth.
What are you doing with clean tech or green tech?
Sure. We're very interested in, among the climate tech capabilities, we've been very interested in oceans and ocean tech and blue tech, I think we would call it. Mm-hmm. So as a subsector, we think that is one that is less muddy than the broader statement of clean tech or green tech. Mm-hmm. And so we have a close partnership with several scientists at the Scripps Institute, UCSD. There's some marine biologists that we've spoken with who are working on some really interesting oncology drug target candidates. In fact, I didn't know this, but there's a substantial higher hit rate among drug candidates from marine sources than there are from any other source out there. Mother Nature has spent millions of years developing a variety of substances out there that, in fact, have a much higher efficacy at combating cancer than most other sources in labs. So that's certainly an area. We're also very interested in algae as a means through which to develop industrial materials, certain types of foods as well, and feed for animals. So to us, that's sort of a real interest area for us. oceans tech. We have some partnerships with some ocean-focused nonprofits as well and consortia. So, there's certainly an interest in individualized health around med tech and health tech, but we see a spectrum of systems biology that goes from sort of climate and oceans all the way to human health. In some sense, if we see an increase in temperature of the Earth, the degree of nutritiousness of foods will decrease substantially, and it'll hurt humankind. So we see a real nexus between sort of this notion of what's going on in the Earth and the oceans and what's going on with human health as well.
Actually, one of our clients is Prometheus Materials, which you may have heard about. And the guy, Lauren, the CEO, was actually in the front of Forbes, and they have an algae-based concrete replacement. So in terms of tackling a marketplace that has a lot of environmental consequences in terms of making concrete and buildings and whatnot, they're actually coming up with a much more environmentally friendly solution to that. So I think that's a great market.
Yeah, fascinating stuff. Alex Goldberg, thanks for joining us today. And next time you hear of one of those dog or cat investments, would you give Johnnie and I a call, please? We'd appreciate that.
Will do.
Johnnie Walker, thanks as always. Been a pleasure.
Thank you very much indeed, David, and thank you, Alex.
All right. You can find contact information for our guest today at our website, theangelnest.com, where you can also reach me if you know of an exciting business opportunity or an innovation topic that we should talk about. We produce The Angel Nest with help from Rob Higley and Charles de Montebello at the controls of CDM Studios at the historic and beautiful Art Deco Film Center building just west of Times Square in New York. Thanks for listening, and here's hoping my fellow angels and the founders they support find their next great venture. See you next time.